Let's talk about some, let's discuss some information and charts on AAVE from this week's article in Brave New Coin. So I'm not finished, but I think it's pronounced AAVE based on what I've heard people pronounce the coin as. It is the Finnish word for ghost, which I found out yesterday. AAVE is another entrant into the lending and borrowing space for DeFi, quickly becoming an important backbone in the DeFi ecosystem. I don't believe AAVE has inverse synthetics or inverse A tokens like Synthetics does. So Synthetics has that unique to it. Synthetics does not have flash loans that I'm aware of. So that's one difference for AAVE versus MakerDAO versus Synthetics. There are several other lending and borrowing platforms that offer flash loans, which are a loan you have to pay back in the same transaction. And it sounds complex and impossible and odd, and it's all those things, but there have been millions and millions of dollars stolen or attacked or exploited based on these contracts on other platforms, curiously enough, never on AAVE thus far. That's probably because AAVE has a fee associated with the flash loan. I believe it's 0.09%. Even still, the money that these flash loans are getting shook down for is in the millions in some cases. But nonetheless, AAVE has avoided that scrum, perhaps because it's audited or too secure. I don't know, but very interesting that AAVE hasn't been a part of that. I believe there's at least 20 or more at this point cryptocurrencies available to borrow or lend against. They have fixed and variable rates. You can stake AAVE. There's governance on AAVE. There's an insurance fund for AAVE. Kind of all the same stuff that everybody else has in that regard. Now, the total value locked includes all of these tokens, I believe, and or all the underlying. So this isn't, in this case, this isn't just AAVE in the 4 billion or 3.5 billion. It's ETH, it's BTC, it's USDC, it's everything, right? So this looks a little different than like SNX's TVL looks, because it's not just SNX in the system there. You can basically use anything as collateral, essentially, anything in the top, or anything in the 20 that they allow you to. So it's hard to compare these back to back. It's hard to compare this to like Maker even, because Maker doesn't have as many options for collateral. You know, all these are slightly different when you look under the hood compared to one another, even though they're all just lending and borrowing related type stuff. And there's a million of these now, not just Maker, SNX, and AAVE. But AAVE's number 2 as far as total value locked, because of likely that you can use pretty much anything as collateral. Here's the AAVE transaction counts. So before it was AAVE, it was called ETH Lend. It transitioned from a peer-to-peer lending thing to a liquidity pool situation. They had a 100-to-1 token migration. So all that occurred around October, kind of late 2020, even though the platform was open for business officially in early 2020. This stuff really didn't take off until it became AAVE. We can look at the transactions per day. They were quite high before the migration, but they immediately basically rose back to all-time highs and now are way past all-time highs as far as transaction count for the token. So the token itself, you don't need it for the loans, I believe, based on what I was reading. So again, a little different than SNX. Nonetheless, prices obviously skyrocketing at all-time highs. That's going to affect these values here. The average transaction sizes are going to be affected by prices at all-time highs. But all of this looks incredibly bullish. You know, for the transactions per day to basically go from 0 to 4,000 over the period of less than a year, while also competing against stuff like Maker, SNX, and the million other copycats, definitely says something about AAVE, as well as the large amount of total value locked. If we look at the active addresses in the fill here, active addresses up and to the right, this is exactly what you want to see ever since the migration, just more and more popular. NVT, inverse metric of economic utility, all the way down, basically trending at all-time lows, super bullish. So this is the exact picture you want to see for any token individually. Now, I wouldn't use NVT as a super valuable metric for AAVE just because it's more about the lending and borrowing platform itself and not necessarily the token, but the token certainly plays a role in the bigger picture. If we look at the GitHub commits, they are prevalent. You know, this was obviously during the token migration, pre-token migration, whatever. Fewer commits over the past few weeks, but nonetheless, still activity there. This is their improvement protocols. So just like most projects now, anything with a governance token can vote on the changes to the protocols, and this is just commits for those changes. So not a lot of activity, but I don't really care. It's really about quantity for me. I'm not a developer. I'm not going to sit here and comb through the GitHubs of all these projects. As long as there's something there and there's development and there's developers, then for me, that's good enough. Let's take a look at some insane technicals for AAVE. This is the USD chart on the daily. So it was lend. Basically throughout the lend history, it tried to go to 0. And then since then, it tried to go to infinity. Very clearly here on the trend metrics. I was impressed it hadn't really touched the daily 200-day moving average pretty much 3 times basically in the entire run up. It's up 21,000% or something since the bottom. The 5200 cross has remained bullish. It's held above the 50 even most of its life here. RSI is kind of just whatever. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things in this case. There is a bit of a bearish divergence up here, which I mentioned in the article. Higher highs in price, lower highs in RSI. We are not even a month through the year, and price is already reaching for the R5 yearly pivot. Mark Cuban was talking about AAVE on Twitter the other day. Just an insane amount of eyeballs looking at AAVE, not only for the price, but just for the functionality, the usability, the simplicity of everything. Very impressive. So technicals basically look how they should. It kind of trended and consolidated bullish leading into the year and then exploded after making higher highs definitively. And you'll see this often. Price will make an all-time high, it'll pull back, and it'll return to that all-time high, consolidate, and then make its move from there, because you have a lot of people basically looking at the previous local high and just selling it or saying it's not going to go higher and then shorting it, that sort of thing. If we look at the daily cloud, again, massively bullish since mid-November. You can see a bullish Kuma breakout, bullish TK cross above the cloud, bullish cloud twist. So all of that was happening as it was consolidating at all-time highs. You also have this weird inverted head and shoulder situation that you saw on a bunch of DeFi charts. Shoulder, 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 head, shoulder, 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 and then neckline up here into current price action. So all this looks about as bullish as it can look for the cloud. I like supporting at the Kijun 185 and any drops lower if a local high is put in anytime soon here on AAVE. AAVE BTC, lastly, it is between the R1 and the R2, so I'd look to the R2 as resistance, the R1 as support. I'd look at the Kijun as support. I would look at all this stuff down here, 200-day, yearly pivot, VPVR as downside support. If this pulls back dramatically, it's in price discovery. Beyond the R2, you have the R3, R4, R5. So plenty of targets for the upside. You can also measure the 1618 fib from high to low or high to low, whatever you want to do here. No bear div here. So all this looks, again, about as amazing as you'd expect it to look for the bull side. So technicals look great. Fundamentals are phenomenal. Not only is it a project, it's, like I talk about with a lot of these DeFi things, it's not an empty cathedral. This like grand plan to do something. People are using it and using it a lot and loving it and talking about it. And all this is great because speculation right now is super high on the DeFi stuff. When that dies down, AAVE itself may die down token-wise as far as price. But strike while the iron's hot, make hay while the sun is shining. All this stuff is extremely new and really filling a niche that not only the traditional world doesn't fill, but even the crypto world didn't fill at the time. And it's expanding upon Maker, expanding upon stuff like SNX, and it created a bunch of copycats. Imitation is the biggest form of flattery. So AAVE the project looks at the moment super healthy. It's never been hacked that I can recall. It's been audited by a ton of companies. I don't know, the future looks bright for AAVE. Definitely on all cylinders here.